So, welcome back, everyone, for another session on Judges. We are going to pick up with the ministries of the judges here in just a moment. Um, I would first like to ask if folks are watching this as a recording, if you could reach out to me by email or a text message just to let me know you're out there. I just want to have a good bead on kind of how many people we're reaching as a recording. It's easy to tell who's here with us as the session is going, but I do know we have a faithful group of people who are keeping up with the content later. So please reach out to me and let me know you're out there. So last week we worked with Othniel, with Ehud, with Shamgar, and Deborah and Gideon, which brings us to somebody who is not a judge, but kind of moves the story along and again just provides us proof that we are starting to really circle the drain here with the character of some of the people who are stepping up here. Uh, Before we move on to Abimelech, any questions or thoughts? Anything hanging out from last time that we could benefit from touching on first?
I guess I'm a little uncertain of how these judges get to be judges. Do the people elect them? Does God say, this is who I want? And
So far, it has been God has appointed the person. When we get a little further into the book, there's going to be some variation in that. But so far, it is very clear that God is the one who lifts this person up, and God is the one who pours out His Spirit on the person of His choice. Like I said, as we get a little farther in, that's going to shift and change a little bit, but it primarily is God says so.
What's the logistics of that? Like, does a prophet come and say, this is the anointed one for this purpose at this time? Or how do they go about? Because I mean, for a group of people to say, hey, God chose me, so I'm gonna be the boss now.
So it says, for Gideon, an angel of the Lord came and spoke. Let's see. All it says for Othniel is God raised up a deliverer, Othniel, son of Kenaz. The Lord raised up for them a deliverer, Ehud, son of Gera. There are not a lot of specifics on how this happens. It's just God does it.
Well, there weren't any specifics for Moses either, was there? I mean, all of a sudden Moses was the leader.
Right, or at least no specifics that anyone else was party to. He did have the experience on the mountain and the burning bush, but nobody else was there. So yes, I will not presume to try and fill in those blanks. If the folks who had access to the stories did not know how or did not think it was important in the story, this is one of those times where I will not try to venture a guess. But like I said, we will see a little bit of variation in that as we go forward. So all that is to say, can't tell you. It's not in the book. So let us go ahead and turn to Judges chapter 9. So this is following the ministry of Gideon, and Gideon leads a good ministry. He delivers the people. The people want to make him king, and he very wisely and faithfully says, no, God is king, and I'm not. But then he goes ahead and he creates this ephod, which turns into some sort of idol that people are worshiping, and that kind of taints his legacy there. So Gideon has 70 sons, and we get this story here of what happens in his family after Gideon dies. So let's go ahead and start with Judges 9, verses 1 through 6. If you happen to have one of the maroon Bibles from church, we'll get started here on page 202. Carol, will you go ahead and start us with chapter 9, 1 through 6?
Sure. Now Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem to his mother's kinsfolk, and said to them, and to the whole clan of the mother's family, say in the hearing of all the lords of Shechem, which is better for you, that all severity of the sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. So his mother's kinfolk spoke all these words on his behalf in the hearing of all the lords of Shechem. Their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they had said, he is our brother. They gave him several pieces of silver out of the temple of Baal-berith, with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows who followed him. He went to his father's house at Orpah and killed his brothers, the son of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, survived, for he hid himself. Then all the lords of Shechem and of Beth Millo came together, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar at Shechem.
So people had wanted to make Gideon, who is also known as Jerubbaal, which means something like Baal contends with because of his love of ripping down altars to Baal. They wanted to make him king, and he refused. So now, among his 70 sons, some of them seemingly decide, well, maybe the time is now. Maybe we'll go ahead and step up and be the king. And Abimelech decides that he needs to take action so that he can be the onlyest one. And what is the action that he takes here?
Kills his brothers.
Yeah, he's got 70 brothers, and he seems to kill 69 of them. So yeah, this is pretty bad. He hires people to do this. Now that one who survives goes ahead and gets in touch with the rest of the people of Israel, and that's what we get in verses 9 through verses 7 through 15. Nick, would you share that with us, please?
When it was told to Jotham, he went and stood on the top of the Mount Gerizim and cried aloud and said to them, listen to me, you lords of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. The trees once went out and anointed a king over themselves. So they said to the olive tree, reign over us. Olive tree answered, shall I stop producing my rich oil by which gods and mortals are honored? Or go sway over the trees? Then the tree said to the fig tree, you come and reign over us. But the fig tree answered, shall I stop producing my sweetness and my delicious fruit and go sway over the trees? And the tree said to the vine, you come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, shall I stop producing my wine and that cheers gods and mortals and go sway over the trees? So all the trees said to the bramble, you come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, if in good faith you're anointing me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come out the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. You want me to stop there or keep going?
Oh, we can stop there. That's perfect. So who again is telling this story?
It says Jotham in verse 7.
Right. So he is the lone survivor of Abimelech's sons. And he gathers all the people of Israel together at Mount Gerizim and tells this parable. How do we interpret this parable? What are we supposed to get out of this story in the context in which he tells it?
It says, with a little help from the annotations here, it's basically saying that we're asking the lowliest of the lowly to rule over everybody, because the bramble is a worthless, crummy weed. I think that's the kind of thing that blows in the westerns, in the wind, that blows like a big ball,
Mhm.
as opposed to the a fig tree, which is very valuable and produces great things, as well as a olive tree. So that, I believe that's what it's saying, that the lowliest of the low has now been put in charge.
Right. Yeah. First of all, we got to remember Gideon very faithfully pointed out God is king, but even among those who want to be king, they've ended up with the worst possible person to be king. Others would probably have done a better job, and they are not taking the job, and now they've ended up with this. And then if we, in verse 15, if in good faith you're anointing me king, come and take refuge. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars. What do we make of that?
My footnote said perhaps not monarchy in principle, monarchy founded on theft and murder, and Jotham denounces.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't think the people are in good faith anointing him king. Him becoming king all has to do with him murdering people and taking bribes and all these sorts of things. Um, if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. So if we let this guy become king, the whole house is going to burn down. So Abimelech goes on this campaign to try and become king, and he is fighting against different places within Israel, and he's having some success and some setbacks, but he's trying to secure his place as king through warfare. And finally, we get to Judges 9, verses 50 through 57. Jane, will you go ahead and share with us, please, the thrilling conclusion of Abimelech?
Then Abimelech went to Thebez and encamped against Thebez and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and all the men and women and all the lords of the city fled to it and shut themselves in. And they went to the roof of the tower. Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and came near the entrance of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Immediately he called to a young man who carried his armor and said to him, "Draw your sword and kill me, so people will not say about me, a woman killed him." So the young man thrust him through and he died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they all went home. Thus God repaid Abimelech the crime he committed against his father in killing his 70 brothers. And God also made all the wickedness of the people of Shechem fall back on their heads. And on them came the curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal.
So, yeah, God makes this happen. God repays him for what he has done to his brothers, or actually, I guess the way the story says, what he has done to his father, which is, I just think, an interesting understanding of it. But again, it strikes me as interesting that it almost seems like he is more troubled that a woman has killed him than that he is dying. He's okay with somebody stabbing him clean through with a sword, as long as it's a man. So I just find that interesting. So this again, some of these ideas of let's experiment with monarchy. All the other kids around the neighborhood have monarchs. Why can't we? And that is going to come up again by the time we get to Samuel. But again, this experiment in monarchy ends very poorly for everyone involved.
I wonder what it means where it says for the curse that all of them, that people of Shechem fell back on their heads. And it says the curse, but it doesn't, it doesn't give any further details. I don't know what it even means by falling back on their heads means.
Well, I think having it fall back on their heads means that it's going to kind of come back and have an impact on them. I'm not quite sure what the curse of Jotham is.
My reference says verse 20. So he kind of in looks like in 19 and 20 he kind of explains verse 15,
Mhm.
the bramble and the trees and
Right.
stuff. 'Cause I really had to look up that a couple of times. So it didn't make sense to me.
Right.
But it says, basically because the people were at as much fault as Abimelech because they asked for him.
Mhm.
So it says, but if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the lords of Shechem, and let fire, I lost it, sorry.
And from Beth Millo and devour
Yep.
Abimelech.
Yep. So,
Okay.
but it's hard to gauge, but maybe during the course of their siege, maybe they all got whacked. I don't know.
So it has something to do with Jotham has kind of called down a curse on them, and because they have gone along with Abimelech's scheme, they are going to suffer the consequences of it.
Yeah. I think we can be sure it wasn't good or nice.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes, this was not something that they would have asked for. Other thoughts or questions on that?
So God didn't appoint these last two judges, right?
So yeah, Gideon gets multiple signs from God, so that I think is probably a sign of that. But when we get to Jephthah, we are going to see something else going on. So we will get that, which is interesting because we'll get to Jephthah, we'll see something else going on, and then we get to Samson, and it's almost the polar opposite in terms of God selecting the judge. But first, we have to get through Tola and Jair, because remember, we have a few of these so-called minor judges to get us up to a total of 12 judges. Mark, will you share the brief ministries of Tola and Jair, chapter 10, verses 1 through 5?
Okay. After Abimelech, Tola, son of Puah, son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, who lived at Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim, rose to deliver Israel. He judged Israel 23 years. Then he died and was buried at Shamir. After him came Jair the Gileadite, who judged Israel 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys, and they had 30 towns, which are in the land of Gilead and are called Havoth Jair to this day. Jair died and was buried at Kimon.
Okay. And then we have, as you maybe see in the section title, oppression by the Ammonites, who are some people who live off to the east. And then the people cry out to God, and God is going to go ahead and lift up a deliverer for them. And that is how we get to Jephthah. Tom, will you go ahead and share with us the start of the Jephthah story, chapter 11, verses 1 through 11?
Now Jephthah, the Gileadite, the son of a prostitute, was a mighty warrior. Gilead was the father of Jephthah. Gilead's wife also bore him sons, and when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah away, saying to him, "You shall not inherit anything in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob. Outlaws collected around Jephthah and went raiding with him. After a time, the Ammonites made war against Israel, and when the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said to Jephthah, "Come and be our commander so that we may fight with the Ammonites." But Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "Are you not the very ones who rejected me and drove me out of my father's house? So why do you come to me now when you are in trouble?" The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "Nevertheless, we have now turned back to you so that you may go with us and fight with the Ammonites and become head over us, over all the inhabitants of Gilead." Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "If you bring me home again to fight with the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them over to me, I will be your head." And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "The Lord will be witness between us. We will surely do as you say." So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah.
So, how do we see kind of the character or the quality of the character of the judges continue to slide here with Jephthah?
He seemed like kind of a loose cannon. He was running around with bandits and causing trouble. Outlaw.
He is keeping very unsavory company. He has been run out of his own father's house. Uh, Clearly Jephthah did not have control over who his parents were, but um, likely was looked down on with his mother being a prostitute. Um, so yeah, he maybe it shouldn't surprise us given how much Bible we've studied together, but yeah, he probably is not real high up on the list of people you would assume are going to be somebody who delivers God's people. So then the Gileadites come out and say, "Hey, Jephthah, you've been doing a bang up job as a bandit out here. It seems like you're good at fighting. Would you like to come fight the Ammonites?" And Jephthah says, "Let me get this straight. You run me out of town, and now you're telling me that you need me back. And what is the deal that he strikes with the elders?"
For me, I'll be your king.
Yeah, well, he doesn't say king, but he is going to be the leader, the head, the general, the dictator, whatever it is. He's going to be the local strong man. So he says, "Yeah, I'll come back, and if I'm victorious, then yes, I get to be in charge from now on." So he goes ahead and he um, engages in some battles and some fighting, and in the midst of that, uh, he goes ahead and makes a vow to God. So we're going to jump down to verses 29 through 40. I will go ahead and share that with us. So this is chapter 11, 29 through 40. "Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh. He passed on to Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he passed on to the Ammonites. Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, 'If you will give me the Ammonites into my hand, then whoever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return victorious from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's, to be offered up by me as a burnt offering.' So Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord gave them into his hand. He inflicted a massive defeat on them, from Eror to the neighborhood of Minnith, 20 towns, and as far as Abel Keramim. So the Ammonites were subdued before the people of Israel. Then Jephthah came to his home at Mizpah, and there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and dancing. She was his only child. He had no son or daughter except her. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low. You have become the cause of great trouble for me. So for I have opened my mouth to the Lord and cannot take back my vow." She said to him, "My father, if you have opened your mouth to the Lord, do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth, now that the Lord has given you vengeance against your enemies, the Ammonites." And she said to her father, "Let this thing be done for me. Grant me 2 months so that I may go and wander on the mountains and bewail my virginity, my companions, and I." "Go," he said, and sent her away for 2 months. So she departed, she and her companions, and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. At the end of 2 months, she returned to her father, who did with her according to the vow that he had made. She had never slept with a man. So there arose an Israelite custom that for 4 days every year, the daughters of Israel would go out to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite.
So did he kill her? He offered, he made a vow to God, but it doesn't say he killed her.
He did with her according to the vow he made, and the vow was to offer up whoever came out to greet him as a burnt offering.
Okay.
So the first thing to note is that even though, how does Jephthah, we touched on this earlier, how does Jephthah become the judge?
God put his spirit on him. Well, I mean, he did it by cunning. Sorry.
Yeah, so it was a combination of people coming to him and him kind of making the best of the situation, but it was human actors at work here. The elders said, "We think this is the best guy," and he said, "Yeah, what's in it for me?" But Mark, as you very rightly pointed out, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon Jephthah. So God, in some way, affirms or approves of this choice, even though the people make the choice. So I think that's an important departure from the other judges. Like I said, when we get to Samson, it's going to be the polar opposite of that. And again, we just touched on what is the vow that he makes when he is going off to do battle with the Ammonites?
The first one who comes out of the gate, he would slaughter.
Yeah, whoever comes out to greet me when I get home, I'm going to slaughter and make into a burnt offering for you. What are your thoughts on the relationship between Jephthah making this vow and Jephthah winning a great victory over the Ammonites? Does the vow play into that? Does it not play into that? What are your thoughts on it?
I don't think there was any correlation. He did what he thought. It sounds to me like he had a lot of the idol worship, other gods influence is why he made that vow. Didn't have anything to do with the Lord.
So yeah, was this the sort of thing that he'd heard his Canaanite neighbors say before? You know, I think about it in terms of the Spirit of the Lord is already on him. If the Spirit of the Lord is upon him, I think he's going to win regardless of whatever else happens. I don't, I kind of look at it as, I don't think God has a price. I don't think there is something any of us can say, "Hey, God, if I give you blank, will it change your mind?" I just don't know that that is necessarily how God works. So I mean, the it just unfathomable illogic of this vow aside, making a vow like that, I don't think there was a need to. I think God's will was going to happen. And then he makes this terrible offer on top of it. It's just, yeah, I don't know what to do with that.
Were there any other human sacrifices that were happening amongst God's people? I don't remember. I mean, it seems like a strange place to go. It had to be influenced by the ungodly, right? The Canaanites or whoever.
So actually, that's my next bullet point. There is that
Mm.
Torah is pretty clear that, we do not do human sacrifice. We do not do child sacrifice. That is in a few different places, and a few of those places say you are not going to worship in the manner of these other people who offer their children to their gods. We don't do that. Now, remember, we talked about the role of the judge as a mediator of the covenant. The judge is somebody who is supposed to have an active role in making sure that this covenant is front and center for the people and that it is shaping their lives. So for him to act in a way that is so contrary to what God has taught is kind of mind-boggling, and for me just adds to my contention that as we go through the book of Judges, the judges just get worse and worse and worse.
In my version here in the notes, it does have one statement that's kind of interesting. It said it's unclear if verse 31 should be translated whoever as opposed to whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me.
Mm-hmm.
Given the arrangement of homes with courtyards that house domesticated animals, Jephthah may have attended that one of these animals would be encountered first upon his return home.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, it was a distinct possibility that it could also be human.
Right. Yeah, and yeah, we have to assume that he was not thinking a family member was going to be coming out and he would have to do this. But like you said, he made this vow and he is not going to, he's got no problem, ignoring other parts of the covenant, but he's made a vow and he's going to keep that. So yeah, this is very challenging to interpret.
That is an interesting spin, though.
Yeah, did he think that a goat was going to come out first or something like that?
If he had a dog, what if he had a dog?
Mm-hmm.
Dog's going to run out first.
Yep. Supposedly, many of the people in the ancient Near East were not big dog people. So like in the New Testament, when the woman says, even the dogs under the table eat the crumbs that fall from the table. Dogs were kind of scavengers and roamed. That's not to say that nobody kept dogs as pets, but generally, culturally, dogs did not occupy the same place in the heart as they do for 21st century Americans. So he could have had a dog, but my money would not be on that. But yeah, if we think of this set in our own culture, yeah, you'd expect the dog to come out and greet you first, and the cat would still be sitting there saying, "I don't really care whether you come and go." The only animals that have domesticated themselves, by the way. Carol, will you take us into chapter 12, verses 8 through 13? We get 3 more of our minor judges that get us up to 11.
After him, Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel. He had 30 sons. He gave his 30 daughters in marriage outside his clan and brought in 30 young women from outside for his sons. He judged Israel 7 years. Then Ibzan died, and he was buried at Bethlehem. After him, Elon and Zebulun judged Israel, and he judged Israel 10 years. Then Elon the Zebulite died, and he was buried at Ajalon in the land of Zebulun. After him, Abdon, son of Elon, the Parathonite, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. He judged Israel 8 years. I'm sorry, how far do I need to go?
Just give us one more verse there.
Okay, then Abdon, son of Hilal, the Parathonite, died, and he was buried at Parathon in the land of Ephraim, in the hill country of the Amalekites.
So again, we get these three judges that, you know, either the traditions around them were not real fully fleshed out, or for whatever reason, we don't have a lot about them. But those are 9, 10, and 11, and Samson gets us up to an even 12. And then we get to Samson, who very likely is the most well-known of the judges, and his story is quite entertaining, among other things. Nick, will you share with us, please, Judges 13, 1 through 7, and then if you could jump down to the end of the chapter and just give us 24 and 25.
The Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. There was a certain man of Zorah of the tribe of Danite, whose name was Mona. His wife was barren, having borne no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, although you are barren, having borne no children, you shall conceive and bear a son. Now be careful not to drink wine or strong drink, or to eat anything unclean, for you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor should come on his head, for the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from birth. It is he who shall begin to deliver Israel from the hand of Philistines. Then the woman came and told her husband, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like that of an angel of God, most awe-inspiring. I did not ask him where he came from, and he did not tell me his name, but he said to me, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine, a strong drink, to eat nothing unclean, for the baby shall be a Nazarite to God from his birth to the day of his death. The woman bore a son and named him Samson. The boy grew, and the Lord blessed him. The Spirit of the Lord began to stir up in Mahadan between Zorah and Eshtaol.
So do we see any parallels here between the birth story of Samson and anyone else we're familiar with in Scripture?
Well, in New Testament, Hannah's son John was one of them, I thought. And then Samuel, I thought, too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, Samuel's mother is Hannah. John's mother is Elizabeth.
Okay.
But similar thing. These women are both barren, and an angel appears to them and says, I got good news for you. You're going to have a son who is going to do remarkable things. I would say maybe there's a parallel with Isaac. An angel appears and tells Abraham and Sarah, you're going to have a son. We get the episode with Hagar, and God comes back and says, let me be a little more specific. You're going to have a son with Sarah. And so Isaac is born, and in a parallel but not identical situation, an angel comes to a woman named Mary and says, you're going to have a son, and he's going to be special. And she goes, how am I going to have a son exactly? And the angel says, this is a promise from God. So all of these children, Isaac, Samuel, John, Jesus, Samson, they are children born through a promise from God. So right away, even just with Isaac, you can already see that Samson is in some pretty special company here. And the messenger says this child will be among a particular group of people. Who are these people that he's talking about?
Nazareth.
Nazarites.
Right. So a Nazarite is somebody specially set apart for ministry or service to God. Now, typically, a person chooses to take that vow, and it is for a set period of time. Somebody may say, I'm going to take a vow to be a Nazarite for 6 months. I'm going to take a vow to be a Nazarite for a year. And it may be in thanksgiving to God for something. It may be that they feel called to a particular kind of ministry to do. And so usually a person chooses to take that vow. It's kind of like, for a period of time, I'm going to hold myself to a higher standard. With Samson, it's not his choice. God says so, and God says from the day he is born to the day he dies, he is going to be a Nazarite. He's going to be held to this high standard. So that's a little more unique.
What were his obligations as a Nazarite that he was just born into?
So there are some more detailed things in Leviticus, maybe, but yeah, certainly the prohibition against strong drink. Here specifically, he's told, no razor shall come to his head. So there were a couple specific things. And of course, all of this would be, you would observe all of the rest of the commandments within Torah very faithfully. And then on top of that, some other things to kind of set yourself apart. But I know the prohibition against strong drink and eating anything unclean, as well as in Samson's case, no razor shall touch his head. So Samson was not going to be a member of the swim team, I can tell you that much. So according to Bible scholar Michael D. Coogan, Samson's strength is more impressive than his common sense, especially in his dealings with women. And I think that helps us understand a lot of what is to follow here. So Samson goes ahead and he grows up, and the Spirit of the Lord starts to stir in him. And then we get to chapter 14. Jane, will you share with us, please, chapter 14, verses 1 through 4? Oh, we got to unmute you there, Jane.
Sorry about that. Once Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw a Philistine woman. Then he came up and told his father and mother, I saw a Philistine woman at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. But his father and mother said to him, is there not a woman among your own kin, among all our people, that you must go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get her for me, because she pleases me. His father and mother did not know that this was from the Lord, for he was seeking a pretext to act against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines had dominion over Israel.
So again, as a judge, as somebody who is supposed to be an interpreter of the covenant, um, in Deuteronomy 7, God talks about bringing the people into the land that is occupied by all these other peoples. And there is the commandment, do not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons or taking their daughters for your sons. That would turn away your children from following me to serve other gods. So there's some tension here because it's very clear within the commandment there that Samson is not abiding by covenant, but yet we get in verse 4 that this is from the Lord. He is seeking a pretext to act against the Philistines. So I think it's interesting. I would say that it is still, just kind of this race to the bottom that he marries this Philistine woman. But we also get that note that, maybe God was behind this. Maybe this was just a reason for Samson to get involved with the Philistines so he could go waste a bunch of them. But it's an interesting tension nonetheless. Mark, can you pick up where Jane left off and give us verses 5 through 9?
Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah. When he came to the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion roared at him. The Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and he tore the lion apart barehanded, as one might tear apart a kid. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson. After a while, he returned to marry her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. He scraped it out into his hands and went on, eating as he went. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from the carcass of a lion.
So, kind of similar to Heracles in Greek mythology, Samson rips a lion limb from limb with his bare hands. And what gives him the strength to do this?
God.
Yeah, the Spirit of the Lord empowers him to do this. So he has kind of superhuman strength from the Spirit of the Lord. But also, if we think about, he shall not eat anything unclean. A lion is a big cat. It has a fleshy pad on its foot. Torah says you don't eat things that have fleshy pads on their feet. So not only is this a unclean animal in terms of what you could eat, but it is rotten and there are bugs living in it. And he goes and he eats the honey out of it and he gives it to other people. So again, the covenantal observance here is questionable. So it reveals the kind of strength that Samson has from God and also sets the scene for the next part of the story. Tom, will you go ahead and share that with us, please? Verses 10 through 20.
His father went down to the woman, and Samson made a feast there as the young men were accustomed to do. When the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. Samson said to them, "Let me now put a riddle to you. If you can explain it to me within 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 festal garments. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 festal garments." So they said to them, "Ask your riddle, let us hear it." He said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet." But for 3 days they could not explain the riddle. On the 4th day they said to Samson's wife, "Coax your husband to explain the riddle to us, or we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us here to impoverish us?" So Samson's wife wept before him, saying, "You hate me. You do not really love me, You have asked a riddle of my people, but you have not explained it to me. He said to her, Look, I have not told my father or my mother. Why should I tell you? She wept before him the 7 days that their feast lasted, and because she nagged him, on the seventh day he told her. Then she explained the riddle to her people. The men of the town said to him on the seventh day before the sun went down, What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and he went down to Ashkelon. He killed 30 men of the town, took their spoil, and gave the festal garments to those who had explained the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companions who had been his best man, given to his companion who had been his best man.
So, what is his undoing here? What leads to him losing this wager?
Because he fell into his wife's demand.
Yep. His foreign, his non-Israelite wife gets it out of him. And interestingly enough, Samson is now on the hook for 30 linen garments and 30 festal garments. So he just goes to another Philistine town, kills 30 Philistines, takes their stuff, and gives it to the other Philistines. So chapter 15, he goes on and he fights a series of actions against the Philistines, and he just keeps wasting the Philistines time after time. And then we get down into chapter 16. I will go ahead and start with chapter 16 verses, I'll go 1 through 4 here, or 1 through 5. Once Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute and went into her. The Gazites were told, Samson has come here. So they circled around and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They kept quiet all night, thinking, let us wait until the light of the morning, then we will kill him. But Samson lay only until midnight. Then at midnight he rose up, took hold of the doors of the city gate and the 2 posts, pulled them up, bar and all, put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. After this, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The lords of the Philistines came to her and said to her, Coax him and find out what makes his strength so great, so that we may overpower him, so that we may bind him in order to do him. And we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So, first incident here, again, highlights his certain morally casual attitude, as well as his incredible strength. They say, oh, we're going to wait for him by the city gate. Well, he just rips the gate right off the wall and carries it up the hill. And then he falls in love with Delilah, and the Philistines tell Delilah, figure out what makes him so strong. And if I remember from Hebrew class in seminary correctly, Samson is related to a word for sun or light, and Delilah is related to a word for evening or darkness. So they're light and darkness, or day and night. In the middle of chapter 16, Samson repeatedly lies to Delilah about what gives him his strength. And every time she goes to the Philistines and says, oh, I figured out what it is, and they show up, and Samson has to waste a bunch more Philistines. Finally, we get down to verse 15. Carol, will you pick up there with verses 15 through 22?
Then she said to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me 3 times now and have not told me what really makes your strength so great. Finally, after she had nagged him with her words day after day and pestered him, he was tired to death. So he told her his whole secret, and she said to her, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, then my strength would lead me. I would have become weak and would be like anyone else. When Delilah realized that he had told her his whole secret, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, "This time come up, for he has told me his whole secret to me." Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought her the money in their hands. She let him fall asleep on her lap, and she called a man, and he had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. He began to weaken, and his strength left him. Then she said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." When he awoke from his sleep, he thought, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him.
Oh, go ahead and give us 21 and 22 there.
Okay, sure. So the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles, and he ground at the mill in the prison. But the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved.
So again, what is Samson's undoing this time around?
Gives it to the nagging.
It's another foreign woman, is another woman from outside of Israel. Yeah. Like Coogan says, his strength is more impressive than his common sense, especially in his dealings with women. And probably a part of the story that most of us have been familiar with at least some point. Nick, will you give us the conclusion of Samson's ministry in verses 23 through 31?
Now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to their god Dagon, and to rejoice, for they said, "Our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hand." When the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, "Our God has given us our enemy into our hands, the ravager of our country, and who has killed many of us." And when their hearts were merry, they said, "Call Samson, let him entertain us." So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. They made him stand between the pillars, and Samson said to the attendant who held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars and with this house stress, so that I may lean against them." Now the house was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, and the roof, they were about under the roof, on the roof, there were about 3,000 men and women who looked on Samson performed. Then Samson called the Lord and said, "Lord God, remember me and strengthen me only this once, O God, so that with this one act of revenge I may pay back the Philistines for my 2 eyes." And Samson grabs the 2 middle pillars of the house in which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against him, his right hand on the one and the left hand on the other. Then Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." He strained with all his might, and the house fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So those who killed at his death were more than those he had killed during his life. Then his brothers and the family came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Estoli in the tomb of his father, Mona. He had judged Israel for 20 years.
So Samson, at the very end, calls on God and is able to, kind of defeat the Philistines one final time in that. Thoughts? Thoughts on this story, or kind of the Samson story in general?
I have a question. So in the case of Samuel, he was given to the monastery basically at an age
Mhm.
to learn. Well, it doesn't seem like Samson was a Nazarite in moniker only. Like, did he never go to school? Obviously, he didn't learn much, if he did.
Right. Yeah, we kind of jump right from, Samson was born, he grew, the Lord blessed him, the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him, and then he goes and tries to get a wife. So we really get nothing about his upbringing. And yeah, like you said, even Samson says, well, I'm a Nazarite. Hmm. Maybe you're not like the best example of a Nazarite. But yeah, that is interesting. He has some awareness of it, but does not really follow through on it, so to speak.
Is this kind of going on that line of thinking? Is this kind of how the Israelites just kind of started falling away? Not taking the Mosaic law as seriously as they should have been. And Samson's just an example of it.
Yeah, I think this is, and I think what we're going to see next week is this refrain of, people did what was right in their own eyes. So yeah, I think it kind of reflects the increasing challenge and difficulty among the whole people that gets us to a place where God will finally say, you know what, maybe these people should have a king. So yeah, I think it is emblematic of what the authors see as just the people getting further and further away from the covenant. One thing that I was struck by as I read this was, when the Philistines gather to rejoice, our God has given Samson into our hand. Our God has driven our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed so many of us. And their hearts were merry. And I think it's just interesting, that from the Philistine perspective, their God has given them this great victory by defeating Samson. Whereas, the rest of the story is told from the Israelite perspective, and it is Samson's own refusal to abide by the covenant that has led to his loss of strength. Whereas the Philistines say, "Oh no, actually, it's because our God is just that great," and kind of the difference of how people interpret the same events based on where they're coming from.
Wonder what kind of entertainment Samson did.
Yeah, it does not specify to my knowledge. Yeah, maybe it was just the entertainment of, yeah, this is the guy who, we have feared so much, and he's not so scary now, is it? I don't know.
Could have been performing feats of strength that were controlled.
Right? Could have been.
And he asked God for one more prayer. God granted him that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Samson, in my opinion, was a cut above most of the other characters we talked about tonight. He just had a weakness for loose women or questionable women, from what we can gather, which does happen to this day.
Any other insights or thoughts, questions on some of the ethically dubious people we have studied tonight?
Does that make it 12 or there's more?
That makes it 12. So next week we are going to shift from kind of the ministries of the judges to some of the things that were going on kind of on a little wider scale between tribes and those sorts of things. So we've actually finished the stories of the judges, and then we're going to get into some other stories of what is going on with a couple of different tribes and how they interact. But it is going to stay on the same trajectory of things just keep getting worse and worse. But we're going to shift from looking at it in terms of individuals and the way their ministry works within the wider people to a little bit wider scope of what's going on. So yes, we have gotten all 12 judges. Yes. So if there are not any other questions or insights, why don't we go ahead and close our time of study tonight praying the Lord's Prayer. Would someone be willing to pray the Lord's Prayer on behalf of the group?
I can do that.
Thank you.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
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 Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for your time and your engagement, and we'll see everybody again soon.
Thank you, Pam.
Good night.
You're welcome.
Good night,
Night.
everyone.